Good morning, my friends. This is Rich, Ranger 5, Rusty, known by many names. This is an update, kind of an update about what's been going on in the eBay sales, more kind of a business or resale, and to talk a little bit about what's going on with Main Street Antiques and Uniques, and my business personally. Of course, I'm a partner with Main Street Antiques and Uniques, and then my business before that was Fort Worth Rarities, and I dealt specifically with, when I had Fort Worth Rarities, I dealt specifically with rare coins, sports memorabilia, rare certified comic books, and other collectibles, but basically those three areas: cards, comics, and coins. The most valuable, really, in my opinion, are coins, because I mean there's coins worth thousands and thousands of dollars. In fact, I was somewhat involved with a coin called the Brasher doubloon. And some of you may have heard of the Brasher doubloon, but there was a silversmith named Ephraim Brasher. And Ephraim Brasher was actually a neighbor of George Washington in New York. He was a silversmith. You can still find EB silver out there. If you find some old coin silver, look at the mark. If it says EB, more likely it's Ephraim Brasher. Try to get some of the original stuff, not the newer EB. But the silverware itself is very, very collectible. Even with coin collectors, they like EB or Ephraim Brasher old coin silver spoons and forks and knives and surfing pieces, tea sets, etc. And of course, that's all what they call coin silver, which is 90% silver. A lot of times, coins were actually melted down to make it. But anyway, back to one of the rarest coins in U.S. history. So, George Washington commissioned Ephraim Brasher to make a prototype, one of the first prototype American gold coins, and that's called the Brasher doubloon. And I'm kind of just doing this off the top of my head, but I think there's 7 that are known to exist still. One's owned by the DuPonts, the DuPont family. One, I think, travels with the ANA, the American Numismatic Association, in their money museum. I know there's one in the Smithsonian Institute. But out of the 7, you know, we talked earlier about how coins are certified. Out of the 7, the one that's certified in the highest condition was actually bought at auction, and owned by one of the companies that I used to work with. And of course, all the brokers, or we don't really call ourselves brokers, but basically that's what we were, or that's what we are. But all of the rare coin guys, the numismatists, the acquisition directors, and known by many names, all of us there at the company were, of course, trying to find the next owner of this particular coin. The company bought it at auction, and I think it was 2014, I believe, and paid somewhere around $4 million. And then we sold it a couple years back, I think end of 2018, and it went close to $6 million, somewhere around there. So anyway, that's probably the most extreme example of a historical piece. Now, a coin like that, it's less than an ounce of gold, and it, you know, certified. A coin like that, you know, the amount of gold that's in it is really immaterial. it's a historical piece. Like I said, there's only 7 known to exist, and having the finest known example was pretty special. And anyway, that's the kind of stuff that I've dealt with. I've seen gold bars recovered from shipwrecks, big giant silver bars recovered from shipwrecks, and there's so many great stories that go along with them. And maybe I'll talk more about some of those kinds of treasures that I was blessed enough to be involved with. Unfortunately, I wasn't the one that sold the brasher doubloon, and I didn't get the commission from that sale. If I did, I'd probably be set up for a couple years, because even the commission from that sale was quite good, plus the bonuses that went with it for finding the buyer. But to kind of get back to where we are now, or where I am now, I left California, moved back to Texas, where I had lived previously. And when I retired from the military and was living outside of Houston in Beaumont. And then so I returned back to Texas and started Fort Worth Rarities, which is still there. It's still kind of limping along, but I kind of lost interest in the business. Not that it still doesn't exist, it does. I still kind of focus on those 3 areas with that business. But I was doing it by myself. And really, I could work by myself. I actually kind of like to work for myself and nobody else. But in my opinion, you can only go so far when you're working on your own. It really does take good partners, in my opinion, to make a decent business run. I know there's other kinds of businesses you could do on your own, and that's fine, and they could be like a family-run business. But these kinds of businesses, dealing in rarities and so forth, in my opinion, it really takes a good team. Now, throughout the years, I've had different business partners, and I've learned from mistakes about business partners. It's great to have partners, but you really, really, really need to be wise and very selective on who you let in, especially when your name is attached to it. I've had business partners that did things that were shady, and we had to end up parting ways. That's happened to me twice. I've had business partners that had absolutely no imagination, no direction, and even hardly any opinion. And then we had to separate and part ways. I've had business partners that made promises and lied and never did what they were supposed to do. And we had to part ways. And when I moved to Texas, and this second time, and started Fort Worth Rarities, I always had in the back of my mind to be out there looking for good business partners or good people to work with me, and then maybe later, after they worked with me, would end up becoming a limited partner of some sort. There's lots of different ways to do that, and I could talk about that in another video. But in this situation, I met my current business partners because I basically walked into their establishment off the street and asked them if they had any online presence, if they were doing any internet sales, if they do any social media marketing. And their knowledge of doing that successfully, putting all the pieces together, was very, very limited. So I said, hey, why don't you let me do that for you? And they did. And now I'm a partner in the business. So Main Street Antique and Uniques and Fort Worth Rarities have kind of, in a loose way, merged together. And there's 4 of us that are putting all our efforts into this business. And it's done very well so far, and I don't expect it to ever go backwards. It's only going to go forwards. It may change a little bit, but it really has no place to go but up, up, and up, and up. And really, what it comes down to is online sales. You have to get online. Now, I had a multiple approach to that. To me, one of the most important things is Facebook. Regardless of what you may think of Facebook, it is obviously the biggest social media platform. But you could utilize Facebook for business purposes, especially in the resale game. There are so many different social groups or sales groups. One technique or one method that I've been using that's been very successful is, of course, having our Facebook business page and building that. And then, since there's 3 of us that have, our own personal Facebook pages, inviting all our friends. And I started doing that for the company in October. And the page itself has just about 1,000 followers now. That's a pretty big jump in that short amount of time. And there's some different methods of getting that many followers. But on my personal page, I had 5,000 acquaintances or friends, and then I had another 1,500 followers. And this is something that I had built over time already. So when I took over Main Street Antique and Unique's Facebook page, of course, I invited all of them, as many as would jump on and take a look and see what it was. And the other 2 that are connected, Jenny and Aaron, they did the same with, and I'm sure they all had like 200 to 300 friends or maybe less. So a lot of that was from that. But since then, I started building. Of course. Let me backtrack a little bit. Besides the Facebook page, there is an Instagram account connected to it, and Twitter, and Pinterest. And then we have a little shop on Etsy, and we have recently started our own website through Shopify. And then, of course, we have our eBay store. And I would say those are the main things. So you've got eBay and Etsy as the selling platform. You've got the Shopify website, which is connected to the Facebook page, and you can buy directly from Facebook. You don't even have to go to the Shopify store. And then for social media and marketing, you've got, like I said, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. And there's a few others. I even have started a little store on Depop. That's the same items, so you cross post items. And I've got a lot of sales on Depop. I wouldn't say I have a lot of sales on Depop. I have a lot of sales of the items that were put on Depop because they were cross posted. They would sell other places. so people that were on Depop would see all those sales, because I'd mark everything as sold, and they would start asking a lot of questions, like, oh, how did you get this sold, and where did you get the item, and those types of things. And most of the things that are sold on Depop are clothing or like streetwear, but there are a few that put household items too. I put mid-century glass, I put artwork, I put baseball cards, I put a lot of different things on Depop, and it attracts a lot of attention because there's not a lot of people doing that. And for more than anything, I don't really use it to sell. I mean, I do in the long run, but not to sell on Depop. It's more to attract attention, and I kind of use it as a marketing tool. And it's worked out well because people have gone on Depop, seen what they had, asked me a question, and ended up going to Facebook and to the Facebook group for the business, and then buying there, or eventually going over to eBay and buying off the eBay store, the Etsy store. So I use it as a marketing tool. But anyway, let's get back to eBay. Now, there's some specific ways to sell on eBay that will get you noticed pretty quickly. And you may have seen this before, or heard about it before. Excuse me. I have a little cold. No, it's not the COVID. But, there's a specific way to list, how to list, use the entire title, put descriptive words in there. They don't have to be in any kind of order. I think they allow you 80 characters in the title. Use them all. Don't capitalize, or don't put your title in all caps. I see that all the time, where people put, it's like they're screaming. You capitalize each word, but do not capitalize the entire word. It's a no-no. eBay doesn't like it. But fill up the whole line. You don't have to use if, and, but. You can leave those out. You don't need to use punctuation, so don't worry about the commas and the periods and the quotations and all that. You can leave that out. You're just putting in descriptive words in the title, and use the entire title. Because remember, that's going to come up on a search, on a Google search. And people are just putting in descriptive words. Don't put in a word that has absolutely nothing to do with what you're selling. It has to make sense. So that's the first thing I would say. and then down in the description, make sure you put a good detailed description. Now, if you want to use proper punctuation, everything down in the description, that's fine. eBay allows you up to 12 pictures. Use them all. Take good pictures. Use a background, like a white background or a darker background if the item's white. Make sure you have good lighting. It's very easy to build yourself a little photo box. You just use a white bed sheet and pin it to the wall and then let it drape down over the top of your table or your workspace. You take pictures that way. But they allow you up to 12 photos, so use them all. And always give a size. Give the height of the item, the width, the depth, whatever. If it's a piece of clothing like a shirt, especially if it's vintage clothing, it doesn't matter if the tag says extra large. You still need to take a measurement of the shirt size, let's say. So you measure from pit to pit, from the edge of the shirt to the edge of the shirt if it's all stretched out on the top of a table. And most people understand pit to pit measurements. And then you take a measurement of the length, so from the collar down to the bottom of the shirt, across the back, the shoulders, which are from seam to seam across the back of the shirt, and then the sleeve length from the shoulder seam all the way down to the end of the cuff. Those are 4 different measurements, as an example, that are needed for shirts, men's or women's or what have you. And so you need to have some detailed descriptions in there. Always, if it's a piece of clothing, always take a picture of the tag. There's so many listings I see that no one takes pictures of the tag. You don't know what brand it is. You just have to take their word for it. Most people want to see the tag because the tag and the font that's used in the tag will help determine the date or about or what decade the piece of clothing was made in. People want to see that. They want to see where it was made. If the piece of clothing was made in the U.S. or in China or what have you. Excuse me. That also helps determine the kind of decade that the piece of clothing was made in. So you need to be as detailed as possible. Good pictures, good titles, great descriptions. And that takes a little time. I started listing things for the antique business. I think really as soon as this COVID thing hit in March, we really focused on listing in the warehouse. I did all the listing and still do all the listing. In fact, that's where I'm going today. We just had a pick over the weekend, or we traveled out of state. And it's a Wednesday, so Wednesday is my first day of the week to go out to the warehouse. And I'll be out there through Saturday. And that's what I'll be doing. I'll be listing all the stuff that was picked over the weekend and putting it on eBay. But since we started listing things on eBay, or I started listing things on eBay back in, I started in October, but I really didn't focus on it until March. And there's almost 2,000 things listed on eBay now. And I think eBay, just over the last 90 days, it's up around 14,000 in sales. But probably if I go back over the lifetime, which isn't very far back, this is a brand new eBay store that was just started in October. And if anybody's ever started an eBay store, they know what it takes to get up to that level. When you first start an eBay store, they only allow you to list 10 things, and they give you a limit. You kind of have to prove yourself, but that's how quick. We got up to, our allowed limit now is pretty much endless that quickly, because eBay saw how many things we were listing and what the values were and what they were selling for. And we're a power seller that quick. So you can take an eBay store from nothing to becoming a power seller pretty quickly if you know what you're doing. You just need a good eBay manager, store manager like me. That's kind of what I do. That's what I'm an expert in. And so we went from zero to, and I'm sure we're well over 20 grand in sales. But there's ways to go about it and ways to do it properly. Excuse me. But anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to cover a little bit, is about how we've become successful online so far. And I would really like your feedback. So if you have some questions and some suggestions, one thing that I've been thinking about lately is, how to plus 10 the business, how to go to the next level. Because these kinds of businesses, you can't cap out on them, and where do you go? You just have more items, a bigger warehouse, more things online. I've been thinking about building our own auction site, and having online auctions, and maybe someday having live auctions. So that's one thing I'm considering. But if you have some suggestions how to scale this kind of business, leave them in the comments, and make sure that you subscribe. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down or whatever. If you give me a thumbs down, tell me why. Tell me some things that we can improve on as far as these types of videos. And hey, kind of an interesting side note, I'm really focusing on, obviously it's the summer, and I'm really focusing on summer kinds of things. So I'm doing a lot of stuff that's vacation oriented or tiki, party-oriented, things like that. And I'm talking about displays in the antique shop. And all of that kind of falls in line. It goes with mid-century modern, which is very popular. But anyway, follow us. Give me a thumbs up. Leave some comments. And in my next video, I will show you some of the things that we picked from this past weekend that I'm listing on eBay. And maybe give you some cost versus values and what they'll sell for. But I'll talk to you soon. This is Ranger 5 out.